Every person who uncovered it went mad. 23 cursed artifacts that terrified experts. Some objects carry more than history, they carry shadows that linger long after their discovery. Across continents and centuries, experts have encountered artifacts whose beauty conceals danger, whose past is marked by misfortune, and whose presence unsettles even the most rational minds. From jewels that survived fire and war to relics that defy explanation, each item leaves questions no historian can answer. Step closer to the stories that have haunted collectors, archaeologists, and scholars alike, and follow the trail of artifacts whose influence seems to defy reason. By the end, you will witness how curiosity, obsession, and the inexplicable converge in treasures that have terrified even the most seasoned expert. The Dybbuk box, United States. It began as an unremarkable piece of furniture, a small wooden wine cabinet of Polish origin, its surface dulled by time, its hinges worn from years of use. When it first appeared at an estate sale in Oregon in 2001, it carried no indication of what would follow. The buyer, an antique dealer named Kevin Manis, had purchased it from the granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor who had warned that the cabinet should never be opened. She spoke of her grandmother's insistence that an evil spirit, a Dybbuk, had been sealed inside an entity, said in Jewish folklore to be a restless, malicious soul capable of attaching itself to the living. Manis dismissed the story as superstition. Within days, that certainty began to unravel. After taking the cabinet to his shop, he noticed a heavy scent of jasmine mixed with something metallic, like old blood. Lights flickered without reason. Shadows seemed to move in places where none should have been. He began to have nightmares of a dark presence beside his bed, its shape vague but unmistakably human. When he gave the box as a gift to his mother, she suffered a sudden stroke the same day she received it. In the hospital, she could only write 2 words on a notepad: hate gift. The box returned to him immediately after. Disturbed by the events, Manis examined the contents of its inner drawer. Inside were peculiar items: a lock of blonde hair tied with a cord, a lock of black hair, a dried rose, a small golden goblet, and a stone carved with ancient letters. There was also a tiny candlestick holder, scorched at the rim as if once used in some private ritual. Each object seemed meaningless alone, but together they carried the faint order of an offering, the kind meant to contain rather than honor. He returned the items carefully and sealed the box again. The phenomenon escalated. His shop was filled with an oppressive cold, even in midsummer. Customers complained of nausea and dread that vanished once they stepped outside. He heard glass shatter in empty rooms, voices muttering in languages he did not know. His health declined, and sleep brought only violent dreams. Convinced the box was to blame, he sold it on eBay in 2003, hoping to be rid of it. The listing included a detailed warning about its supposed curse, but curiosity, not caution, guided the next buyer. The new owner, a college student named Iosif Nitz, soon found himself in the same spiral of unease. Electronics failed in his home without cause. He and his roommates heard footsteps in the hallway when no one was there. The box emitted a faint hum at night, a sound just below the edge of understanding. Within months, he sold it to another collector, who then passed it to a museum curator named Jason Haxton. Haxton approached the artifact as a skeptic. He was a man of science and believed the stories exaggerated or coincidental. Yet almost immediately after taking possession, he began to suffer from bleeding rashes, sudden choking sensations, and vivid nightmares of old women whispering from corners of darkened rooms. Haxton had the box studied by both rabbis and scientists. The rabbis confirmed the legend it resembled a Dybbuk container, a rare and forbidden device meant to trap a malignant spirit. A physicist tested it for radiation, magnetism, and toxins, but found nothing abnormal. No logical explanation emerged. Eventually, Haxton performed a sealing ritual with the assistance of Jewish scholars, placing the cabinet inside an arcane wooden container lined with gold leaf and sacred symbols. Since then, the Dybbuk box has remained under lock and key, its current location undisclosed for safety reasons. Despite this, stories continue to circulate. Those who claim to have come near it describe an inexplicable heaviness in the air, a pressure behind the eyes, a disorienting feeling of being watched. Some say the curse adapts, finding new ways to manifest when forgotten. The box has become both legend and warning, its reputation amplified through documentaries and online accounts. Yet those who have encountered it speak not of fame or fascination, but of fear that lingers long after the cabinet is gone. Even now, the box rests somewhere unseen, and no one can say whether what was sealed inside still sleeps. The Crying Boy painting, England. Flames tore through the small terraced house in Rotherham with a violence that left little standing. When firefighters sifted through the blackened remains, they found one object untouched by the heat, a framed print of a young boy with wet eyes, his expression vacant, his cheeks streaked with painted tears. The family that had lived there did not survive, and the cause of the blaze was listed as accidental. Yet among the ashes, that single image remained immaculate, its surface free of soot, its gaze undisturbed by ruin. It was not the first time. Across northern England, reports began to repeat the same unsettling pattern. Fires that consumed entire rooms left one identical painting unharmed, as though the boy within it refused to burn. Dozens of homes, scattered across different towns and years, were found with the same reproduction hanging quietly on the wall. Newspapers began to call it the curse of the crying boy, a phrase that spread faster than the fires themselves. What began as a coincidence became an obsession as firefighters, insurance agents, and homeowners noticed the portrait's persistent presence. Each new blaze brought another untouched frame and another uneasy headline. Fire investigators noted that in several cases, the canvas had fallen face down, yet remained untouched by flames, while surrounding furniture, wallpaper, and timber burned to ash, heightening public belief that the painting resisted destruction by unnatural means. At first glance, the painting seemed harmless, the work of a Spanish artist named Giovanni Bragolin, who had produced a series of crying children in the 1950 seconds. Sold cheaply in department stores, the prints adorned countless working-class homes. The child's face was solemn, his eyes so lifelike they appeared to glisten under lamplight, yet something in the expression unsettled those who stared too long. Some claimed the boy's gaze shifted slightly with the angle of the room, while others swore they heard faint weeping when the house was still. The more the legend grew, the more people began to believe that the child was not a model at all, but a spirit trapped within paint and varnish. Decades later, collectors who acquired surviving prints claimed that even reproductions of the painting brought misfortune, reporting electrical faults, sudden heat in closed rooms, and faint sounds of crying near the frame. Investigators dismissed the notion of a curse, attributing the phenomenon to fireproof varnish and mass production. Still, some firefighters refused to keep the prints in their homes, convinced that something about them defied explanation. In one report, a retired officer admitted that even decades later, he could not forget the strange stillness of those portraits found among ashes. When questioned, Bragolin's associates claimed the artist had painted orphans from war-torn Europe, and one in particular, the boy known as Don Benillo, had reportedly watched his parents die in a blaze. Rumour said that after posing for the portrait, the child himself perished in a mysterious fire. Skeptics called it fabrication, but the connection was impossible to ignore. Attempts to break the curse became a kind of public ritual. Newspapers encouraged readers to send their copies of the painting to bonfires organised for mass destruction. On October evenings in the late 1980 seconds, hundreds gathered to watch the portraits burn, their faces lit by orange light as if the child's tears reflected in the flames. Yet many prints refused to ignite even under direct heat, curling at the edges but leaving the image intact. Some people who destroyed theirs later reported strange noises in the night, knocking, muffled cries, or the smell of smoke with no source. Others claimed that accidents followed soon after, as though the act of rejection had stirred something instead of ending it. Today, original prints of the crying boy have nearly vanished, though a few remain in private collections and forgotten attics. In recent years, those who rediscover them online or in antique shops described the same sensations: sudden unease, pressure behind the eyes, and a sense that the child is aware of being seen. Some claim that photographs of the painting cause corrupted files or faint scorch marks on the paper. Others say that when the portrait is displayed beside a flame, the glass trembles slightly, as though remembering every fire it has survived. Each retelling revives the story, reshaping it for a new generation that still wonders whether the boy's sorrow was painted or captured. A single, ominous statement, quiet, unresolved, and different from the Dybbuk box ending in rhythm and implication. The Bassano vase, Italy. Under the dim light of a storage vault in northern Italy, the vase appeared almost luminous, its surface reflecting the weak glow of a single overhead bulb. It was carved from solid silver, its curves precise, its decorations understated vines and leaves etched in delicate relief, worn smooth by centuries of handling. Archivists who catalogued it noted its beauty, yet their reports carried an unease that had little to do with artistry. Among the collection tags, one notation stood out in faded ink: "Do not open, do not display, origin uncertain." The entry was dated 1988, signed only with initials that could not be traced. Records from the late Renaissance speak of a wedding that ended in mourning. In a small village near Napoli, the bride was said to have received the silver vase as a gift on the morning of her ceremony. By nightfall, she was dead. Some accounts describe a sudden illness. Others speak of a violent, unseen force that struck her moments after she touched it. The vase, splattered with wine and blood, was sealed away by her family and buried deep within the cellar walls. For generations, whispers told that anyone who unearthed it would meet the same fate, not immediately, but within days, after strange dreams and growing dread that hollowed them from within. Local chroniclers also noted that every attempt to melt the vase for reuse ended abruptly, the furnaces cracking or extinguishing without cause, as though the metal itself refused to change form. One by one, those who came into possession of the vase followed the same path. The object passed through heirs who died before reaching old age, through collectors who dismissed the warnings as folklore, and through antique dealers who vanished before the sale could be completed. Police records from the 1922 mention a silver vessel of unknown origin found near a body in Verona, the victim having written only the words, "I have paid for it," on a slip of paper. Another death followed weeks later. Another collector found lifeless beside an identical vase that could not be proven to be the same one. The pattern repeated so precisely that even skeptics admitted the coincidences defied reason. Museums refused to exhibit it, and private owners sought priests instead of appraisers. There were claims of exorcisms performed over the vase, though the records of those rituals are incomplete, perhaps deliberately. One curator wrote that he kept it locked in a lead-lined box for 7 years before disposing of it, unwilling to tempt curiosity any longer. The local diocese, when questioned, confirmed that several artifacts had been quietly surrendered under similar circumstances during the 20th century, though no inventory matched the description of the Bassano piece. Even now, certain archivists refuse to handle Renaissance silverwork without gloves, invoking the story as caution rather than belief. When it surfaced again in the 1980, its silver gleam had not dimmed. It was discovered during the clearing of an old estate outside Venice, wrapped in cloth and sealed within a wooden chest, marked simply with the year 1837. The auctioneer who listed it described an extraordinary relic of Italian craftsmanship, unaware of its history. Within months, he was dead of a sudden stroke. The buyer, a physician from Rome, passed away shortly after receiving it. Neighbours later reported that the physician's home lights flickered for hours after his passing, and the chest that contained the vase was found open, though its key was still locked inside. Attempts to trace ownership beyond that point yield gaps payments without recipients, inventories without follow-ups, and shipments whose destinations remain unrecorded. The vase itself was said to have been handed over to authorities for safekeeping, though no museum or agency has ever acknowledged possession. Researchers who study the case agree only on its persistence. Every few decades, the story re-emerges in some corner of Italy attached to a found object that matches the old descriptions: silver, vine-etched, cold to the touch, no matter the temperature. Some witnesses claim the metal vibrates faintly when handled, like something alive but restrained. Others say that its surface dulls in the presence of human breath, as if it absorbs the air around it. Whether the original Bassano vase still exists or not remains uncertain, yet its legend endures in archives, whispered among restorers and curators who understand that not every artifact belongs in light. Even buried silver remembers who last held it, waiting in the dark for the touch that will wake it once more. The Belitung shipwreck treasure, Indonesia. The waters off Belitung Island lie calm and turquoise, above what was once a trade route between worlds. Beneath the surface, sunlight filters through drifting sand, settling over the outlines of a vessel that had slept undisturbed for more than 1,000 years. Fishermen first discovered it in 1998, when their nets caught on fragments of porcelain, unlike anything they had seen. Archaeologists later identified the wreck as a 9th century Arabian dhow, part of an ancient maritime network linking China, India, and the Middle East. What remained inside was astonishing: a perfectly preserved cargo of Tang Dynasty artifacts, sealed in darkness since the ship sank on its journey west. When divers first saw the glint of gold beneath the silt, they thought it a trick of light. The seabed shimmered with bowls and ewers, their surfaces painted with cobalt dragons and phoenixes, and among them lay shapes that reflected light, even in shadow. Photographs taken during the first descent show the artifacts stacked as though arranged for display, each piece facing outward as if waiting to be found. The divers described the silence as crushing, a void deeper than the water itself. Several reported a ringing in their ears as they approached the cargo hold, a sound that faded only when they surfaced again. Within weeks, rumours spread among the recovery team of radios crackling underwater, of shadows moving where no diver swam. Some claimed to have seen faint lights flicker in the silt below, like lanterns rocking in invisible currents. A technician handling recovered bowls experienced sudden vertigo and collapsed, insisting afterward that he heard voices speaking in a language he did not recognize. Though none of these accounts appeared in official reports, several divers refused to return to the wreck, leaving their equipment behind on the salvage ship. The project continued without them, driven by sponsors eager to secure what newspapers soon called the Tang treasure of the Java Sea. The recovered cargo, thousands of Tang Dynasty bowls, ewers, and ornaments, was shipped to Jakarta under guard. Specialists documented each piece with precision, yet one entry puzzled the team: a set of ceramic dishes that appeared in the manifest but not in the crates. The numbers never matched, though the shipment was sealed in the presence of witnesses. Workers reported an inexplicable chill in the storage facility, where humidity monitors failed without reason. One guard refused night shifts after hearing what he described as whispering glass, a faint tapping sound from the containers when the building was quiet. The next day, he resigned. Researchers noticed subtler changes as the collection was catalogued. Cameras malfunctioned near the most ornate objects, lenses fogging over as though reacting to unseen moisture. Conservators described an odor of salt and decay that lingered for hours after unpacking, even though the crates were dry. A senior curator later admitted that the water-stained logbooks kept during the excavation showed different handwriting near the end, though no replacement staff had been recorded. When questioned years later, several surviving members of the expedition said they never received certain wages or certificates promised for their work, as if their names had been removed entirely from the project's record. Years later, museum staff began to speak quietly of strange malfunctions in the conservation wing. Temperature alarms triggered without cause, and porcelain pieces were relocated overnight, despite restricted access. One restorer claimed that while cleaning a gold cup, she felt the metal pulse faintly beneath her fingers. Another described dreams of a ship surrounded by green water and a single unbroken voice, repeating coordinates she could never recall upon waking. By the early 2000s, sections of the archive were closed indefinitely for environmental reasons, though no documentation has ever explained what those conditions were. The treasure, valued at over $80 million, now rests in a vault where even curators are discouraged from prolonged handling. Occasionally, replicas of the artifacts appear in private auctions without a verified origin. The sellers insist they are reproductions, yet their glaze bears microfractures consistent with immersion in salt water for centuries. Buyers have reported inexplicable patterns of dampness spreading across walls, the smell of the sea in sealed rooms, and, in one case, recurring dreams of drowning beneath unbroken light. Indonesian authorities deny that any pieces are missing, but archival gaps remain, and so do whispered accounts of divers who have not been seen since that final recovery mission. Somewhere beyond the reefs, the water still turns over shards of porcelain-like pages in a story it refuses to let end. The Black Orlov Diamond, India, Russia. Long before its brilliance caught the eyes of collectors, the Black Orlov diamond was said to have shimmered in the dim light of a Hindu temple near Pondicherry, its dark facets regarded as the eye of a sacred deity. The priests believed it was not merely carved from the earth, but born of divine fire, a stone that could both bless and protect. Yet over time, stories diverged. Some claimed it had been taken from the idol's forehead by a hand too daring, others that it had been sold under secrecy to fund the rebuilding of the shrine. What remained constant was the silence that followed, a silence that deepened after the gem disappeared, and those once sworn to guard it began to die without explanation. When the diamond vanished from the temple's shrine, it was said that the air within the sanctum turned cold, as though a breath had been taken away from the living world. Traders who dealt in relics traced it to colonial routes through Madras, and then, mysteriously, to Europe, where it began to change hands under names no longer remembered. Some accounts describe a merchant who carried it across the seas, plagued by fevers and dreams of eyes watching him from water. Others speak of a dealer who vanished between ports, leaving only his ledger and the entry. Black diamond, 42 carats, price undetermined. From that point onward, the diamond's trail darkened, and what had been a temple relic became something whispered about in the salons of those who thought themselves immune to superstition. Centuries later, amid the cold grandeur of imperial Russia, the stone resurfaced within the circle of aristocrats who collected rare jewels as proof of lineage and fortune. It was recut, polished into a perfect oval, and renamed the Black Orlov, gleaming against the white silk of an empress's throat. Yet within a generation, whispers of ruin began to follow its sparkle. The first tragedy struck Countess Nadezhda Orlov herself, who was found lifeless after a fall from a high window, the gem still clasped in her hand. Soon after, 2 other women who had worn the stone met similar ends, each from a great height, each death inexplicably linked to despair. To those who knew the stories of the temple, it was said that the deity had reclaimed one by one those who bore what was stolen. One by one, those who claimed it found their lives unraveling, their fates marked not by violent theft, but by a quieter form of ruin, loss of fortune, fractured minds, and deaths that left no explanation beyond coincidence. Historians who studied the Orlov lineage noted the pattern, but dismissed the notion of a curse as a relic of myth. Still, documents from the time describe strange behaviours among its owners. Locked rooms, sleepless nights, servants refusing to handle the gem without gloves. Letters, written by a jeweller in St. Petersburg, mention a faint hum when the diamond was cut under lamplight, a vibration he swore did not come from his tools. In the modern age, its legend lingers among jewellers and curators who speak of the Black Orlov in careful tones, their admiration tempered by unease. The stone now measures 67 carats, mounted in a platinum necklace designed to appear harmless, as if presentation could neutralize history. Those who have examined it under microscopes describe the same phenomenon, a sense of depth that seems to draw the eye inward, as though the gem's darkness were alive with movement. Museum staff who transported it for exhibitions in New York and London have occasionally reported headaches, faint distortions in reflection, and, in one account, a momentary glimpse of their own face, smiling back when they were not. Today, the diamond rests behind glass, silent beneath controlled light, its surface still absorbing every trace of brightness offered to it. Scholars continue to debate whether the tales of the curse began as colonial myth or a way to explain a series of coincidences too precise to ignore. Yet even among those who reject such superstition, the act of standing before the Black Orlov induces a strange awareness, a tightening in the chest, a subtle recognition that the beauty one sees is older than belief itself. The gem has not lost its luster, nor has the unease that surrounds it dimmed with time. Several lights are too ancient to be trusted, and the darkness they reflect remembers every hand that reached for it. The Uluru Rocks, Australia. Under the endless Australian sky, the rock glows, as if lit from within. Rising from the flat heart of the continent, Uluru commands the horizon in a silence that feels alive. Its surface changes with the light crimson at dawn, amber by midday, and deep violet as the sun recedes, as though the stone itself is breathing. To the Anangu people, it is not a monument, but a being, a guardian bound to the earth through stories older than time. Those who stand at its base often speak of stillness unlike any other, a kind of presence that presses softly against the senses, patient and watchful. Across countless generations, stories have spoken of a presence within the stone that watches but never sleeps. The Anangu tell of creation spirits that shaped the land and still dwell within the rock's veins, protecting what must not be taken. They warn that to remove even a fragment of Uluru is to disturb its balance, to awaken something that does not forgive. These are not tales told for wonder, but for respect. The landscape itself is sacred, and each shadow across the sandstone carries the memory of ancient deeds. For centuries, no one dared to challenge that silence. In the early waves of tourism, travelers arrived with cameras and quiet certainty, believing the land would tolerate their curiosity. They came to climb, to carve initials, and to pocket small stones as keepsakes. Some did so with ignorance, others with the thrill of possession, unaware that what they carried away had never been theirs. Park rangers began to notice missing fragments and faint trails where visitors had dug discreetly near the base. Those same visitors soon began sending letters back, apologies written after inexplicable events that seemed to follow them home. Not long after, parcels began to appear at the park's entrance, small, heavy, and marked by careful handwriting. Inside each was a stone wrapped in paper, accompanied by messages of regret. The writers described illnesses, ruined relationships, accidents, or years of persistent misfortune. One envelope from Germany contained a single sentence: "Please return this to where it belongs. It won't let me sleep." Another came from Canada, its sender claiming that every photograph taken since the theft had developed blank. Rangers placed the returned stones in a special area behind the visitor center, where hundreds now rest, their presence quiet but unsettling. Researchers attempting to catalogue the letters called them coincidences, yet none could explain the unease that followed their handling. Some theorized that guilt manifested as misfortune, that belief itself could shape perception and create patterns out of chance. But the evidence grew difficult to ignore. Postal records showed thousands of packages over the years from every corner of the world. A few included items other than rocks, fragments of bark, sand, or even small carvings taken near Uluru's caves. All returned after strange events the senders could no longer dismiss. The phenomenon became known among staff as the Apology Stones. Across the desert, the red monolith endures the shifting winds and unending silence, a presence that seems to listen more than it sleeps. Rangers still receive parcels, some sent by families who claim the curse passed through generations until the stone was returned. The rocks are never placed back upon Uluru. Instead, they are kept apart, as though the land itself must decide whether to accept them again. Travelers who visit speak of unease in the air near the base, a faint vibration that lingers just beyond hearing. Others say the wind carries whispers that echo against the cliffs, not in words, but in feeling something between sorrow and warning. Each year, the flow of returned stones continues, defying explanation. Some are delivered anonymously, without notes, arriving like confessions unspoken. A few come decades after the original theft, mailed by descendants who never visited the desert, yet claim to feel connected to its weight. Scientists still debate whether the pattern is psychological, cultural, or supernatural. The Anangu need no such argument. For them, the stone's power has never been a question. It remains both a gift and a boundary one that endures long after the hands that disrespected it are gone. The earth does not forget what it gives or who dares to take it away. The Maori warrior masks, New Zealand, along the mist-laden shores of Aotearoa, where the sea rolls endlessly against black volcanic sand, stories of guardianship and spirit linger like breath upon the wind. The Maori once spoke of faces carved not merely to represent ancestors, but to contain a fragment of their essence: eyes, hollow yet watchful, mouths silent yet burdened with unspoken remembrance. These warrior masks, hewn from native woods and darkened by oil and soot, were said to breathe when the chants began, their carved mouths moving faintly in the flickering light of the fire. To stand before one was to face both reverence and warning, for each was believed to carry the manna of generations, an inheritance that did not welcome disturbance. Inside the hush of the carving houses, where daylight fell in narrow slivers through the thatched walls, Tohunga Wakairo master carvers worked with a precision that bordered on ritual. The mask was not an object of art, but an extension of being, and the wood itself was selected through prayer and offering. Certain trees were approached with chants, and only when a sign appeared, perhaps a bird circling above, or the sudden stillness of wind, would the carving begin. It was said that some carvers felt the timber pulse beneath their blades, as if recognizing its destined face. As colonization spread across the islands, the ancient balance was disturbed. Traders, missionaries, and collectors arrived with bright fabrics, mirrors, and polished coins, fascinated by the intricate carvings that lined the marae. To them, the masks were exotic curiosities, ornaments of a mysterious culture that seemed frozen in an earlier age. The first to transport such masks across the ocean recorded strange misfortunes: ships delayed by relentless storms, crewmen struck by inexplicable fever, and storage holds where the masks were kept echoing faint, rhythmic knocks through the night. Documents from colonial archives reveal that some captains ordered the masks thrown overboard after nights of relentless whispers or shifting cargo that moved without touch. The masks that survived the voyage often ended up in private European collections, where their new owners soon reported bouts of illness, sudden deaths, or the inexplicable sound of drumming from empty rooms. Yet the collectors rarely admitted such tales publicly, fearing ridicule. They simply locked the artifacts away, ensuring they remained unseen but never truly silent. By the late 19th century, several Maori masks had been catalogued in major museums across Europe. Museum staff in London and Berlin noted an unusual heaviness in the air near the Maori displays, a sense that the temperature shifted when one lingered too close. A curator at the British Museum once wrote of hearing a slow, uneven breath from within a glass case, though no source was ever found. During renovations in the 1970 seconds, several masks were relocated to temporary storage, after which equipment failures and minor injuries multiplied without clear cause. Indigenous scholars and elders, upon hearing of these incidents, urged the institutions to return what they called taonga, tapu, sacred treasures that must not remain in foreign lands. They do not belong to walls, one elder warned. They belong to the soil that remembers them. Over the following decades, museums began discreet negotiations for repatriation. Each return was marked not by ceremony alone, but by care by song, by cleansing, by the kind of reverence that acknowledged that something unseen was being set right. Now, as the faces journey home one by one, the air around them seems to soften. Wrapped in woven flax, the masks are carried with chants that steady their passage, for even after centuries away, they are regarded not as objects, but as presences that had been forced into exile. Elders speak softly to them before dawn, telling them they are remembered, that the sea will no longer divide them from their people. Yet those who handle their return whisper of sensations. They cannot name the faint scent of smoke where none burns, the flicker of shadow where no one stands, the feeling of being seen through eyes that once gazed upon both life and death. Some say the masks have grown quieter since coming home, their restlessness eased by the sound of familiar waves. Others believe silence is merely the breath before remembrance awakens, waiting for the living to listen closely enough. A spirit carved into wood does not forget, it waits for the day when its name is spoken again. The Hope Diamond, France divided by United States. Few stones have travelled under so many names. In one account, it began deep within the Kalur mine in India, pulled from the earth by workers who recognized its unnatural brilliance even in the half-light of their lamps. Early tales say it was set into the brow of a temple idol dedicated to a goddess of war, her image said to demand reverence and fear in equal measure. When the gem was stolen, misfortune was said to follow the thief across continents. Some chroniclers claimed the curse was born not of mysticism, but of sacrilege, that the diamond carried within its depths the grief of what had been desecrated. Whatever the truth, its first known owner, the French merchant Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, would die destitute and disfigured before ever seeing the stone again. Court records from Versailles describe it differently. There, the diamond gleamed as a symbol of prestige, recut into a shape that better suited the splendor of Louis XIV's court. Under chandeliers, it reflected golden light like captured daylight, its blue fire adorning the necks of courtiers who whispered of its brilliance and its omen alike. The king wore it often, naming it the blue diamond of the crown, but servants in the palace kitchens muttered about the men who handled it and died soon after, and about a court jeweler who vanished on his way home one evening. The rumours spread quietly, dismissed as superstition by the aristocracy, yet never silenced completely. When the French Revolution came, the diamond was locked away with the royal treasures, awaiting a fate neither royal nor divine. History turns sharply with the Revolution. In 1792, amid the looting of the Garde Meuble, the diamond disappeared without trace. Guards assigned to protect the royal jewels either fled or were found dead, and the inventory listed the great blue stone among the missing. Decades later, an uncut gem of remarkable colour appeared in London, smaller and altered, its precise origin obscured. Some speculated that the stone had been reshaped to hide its identity, cut down to remove what was believed to hold the curse. But each new possessor, whether jeweller or noble, met a chain of misfortunes, suicides, debts, and untimely deaths that seemed to echo the revolution's chaos in miniature. The diamond had changed shape, but perhaps not its nature. By the time it surfaced again, its edges had changed. It passed into the hands of the English banker Henry Philip Hope, who gave the gem the name it still bears. The Hope family's fortunes soon declined, their wealth eroded by scandal and ruin, until the stone itself was sold to settle debts. Each subsequent owner appeared to inherit more than beauty. Accidents, madness, and unexplained deaths followed its journey through Europe. The Russian princess who wore it was said to have thrown herself from a balcony. A Turkish sultan who coveted it lost his throne within a year. Gem experts examined it as a marvel of cut and colour, yet even they spoke of an unease that came when standing too close. Somewhere between its polished facets, stories of vengeance and loss continued to gleam. The 20th century found it gleaming in American salons. Evelyn Walsh McLean, a Washington heiress, bought it in 1911 and wore it at parties with pride, claiming its legend thrilled her more than its sparkle. But her family's tragedies soon drew the curse's shadow closer. Her son struck by a car, her daughter's suicide, and her husband's descent into madness. Visitors who saw the diamond at her home sometimes described feeling cold as they approached it, a strange weight that dulled the light around it. When McLean died, her estate sold the gem to a jeweller who later donated it to the Smithsonian, perhaps to rid himself of the burden it carried. In the transaction records, the tone shifts from commerce to relief, as though ending a haunting rather than completing a sale. Inside the glass chamber, its stillness feels deliberate. The Hope diamond now sits beneath layers of protection, surrounded by controlled humidity and silent alarms. Tourists stand before it in hushed awe, watching the light slide across its deep blue surface, unaware of the history that clings to every reflection. Curators speak of it as a masterpiece, yet even they admit that something about it resists comfort, a presence that seems aware of being seen, patient behind the glass. Its fire has burned through centuries of empire, ruin, and fascination, outlasting every name it has ever worn. The light it holds is older than the hands that dared to claim it, and in its gleam, the memory of every vanished fortune still burns quietly, untouched by time. The Talano Gold Chalice, Philippines. Tales carried on the wind across the sun-drenched islands of the Philippines spoke of an ancient chalice drifting through villages and marketplaces, carried by elders who described a relic so radiant that it seemed to glow even under the dim light of an overcast sky. Known as the Talano Gold Chalice, it was said to have belonged to a lineage of kings whose wealth and power rivaled the richest empires of Asia. Legends described it as forged with gold so pure that its surface reflected not just light, but the desires of those who dared to touch it. Yet, beneath the allure of opulence and divine craftsmanship lay a shadow that marred every tale, the relentless curse that awaited anyone who sought it. The first recorded accounts of the chalice's curse date back to the early 20th century, when a wealthy Filipino collector began tracing the chalice's rumored movements through scattered family records and secreted documents. His letters speak of a discovery that seemed within reach, of maps drawn in fading ink that traced rivers, caves, and temples now swallowed by jungle. Friends of the collector recalled subtle changes in his demeanor as his obsession grew, describing him as a man simultaneously enchanted and hollow, haunted by glimpses of shapes that did not exist. Within months, the man vanished entirely, leaving behind a home meticulously arranged, yet untouched by the slightest sign of departure. Those who tried to continue his search either fell into confusion or disappeared under circumstances that local authorities never fully explained. Stories of the chalice became interwoven with accounts of mental collapse and unexplainable accidents. One anthropologist, who dedicated years to studying pre-colonial Philippine artifacts, reported vivid hallucinations, sensing whispers in languages he could not identify, and feeling a weight pressing upon his chest when he attempted to catalogue related objects. He noted that even the smallest trace of the chalice, a fragment of gold, a faded illustration, a passing mention in a manuscript, elicited dreams of endless corridors and dark, dripping vaults. Friends grew wary of his presence, noticing that his eyes often darted to invisible corners, as if the chalice itself were watching, judging, and summoning him towards some inevitable confrontation. Local folklore added layers of menace that no written record could capture. The elders spoke of guardian spirits bound to the chalice, whose task was not to protect the object's material value, but to punish the overreaching ambition of men and women. Some claimed that these entities could twist perceptions, making the seeker believe in false leads or lure them into treacherous terrain. Tales described thick jungle paths that shifted overnight, rivers that seemed to reroute themselves, and cliffs that appeared where none had existed the day before. Each account carried the same core warning: those who pursued the chalice for personal gain would find not gold, but despair. Searching for the chalice revealed conflicting traces that refused to align. Some researchers believed it had been hidden within an ancestral home in Mindoro, concealed in a wall cavity behind layers of mortar. Others claimed it had been taken to Europe during the colonial period, only to be spirited away by collectors who refused to speak of it again. Every lead ended the same way: the disappearance or incapacitation of the person who held it. Skeptics dismissed these accounts as superstition, yet the sheer consistency of the outcomes, the breakdowns, the vanishing, the sudden deaths, kept the story alive, compelling even the most rational minds to tread carefully. Encounters with the chalice's traces left survivors changed in ways they could never undo. Accounts describe insomnia, paranoia, and the constant sense of being followed. Dreams of endless darkness, punctuated by the glitter of gold and the echo of distant voices, haunted them. Each retelling emphasized the same pattern: obsession leads to isolation, isolation leads to madness, and madness inevitably demands a reckoning. Even collectors, who claimed to have abandoned their search, felt the chalice's presence, as if its lure extended beyond physical possession, embedding itself into memory and thought. In villages where the legends originated, children are taught to avoid certain caves and riverbanks, not merely for safety, but out of respect for a force beyond comprehension. Pilgrims who have come in search of wealth often leave empty-handed, unsettled, and haunted by the sensation of eyes upon them. The chalice's glow, its promise of eternal brilliance, continues to shine across the imagination of the nation, a beacon for the ambitious and a warning for the cautious. And still, deep within the jungle, under leaves that have not been disturbed for decades, some say a faint glimmer waits, patient for the next hand that reaches too far. The idol of the goddess Cipatir, Indonesia divided by Japan. Fragments of rubber appeared unexpectedly on the shoreline of a small Dutch port in the early 20th century. They were thin, black tablets, slightly sticky to the touch, etched with strange symbols that no scholar could immediately identify. Local fishermen who discovered them scattered along the sand after a storm reported feeling sudden chills and unease, as if the wind carried whispers meant only for them. At first, the pieces were dismissed as debris from some far-off factory, but their irregular appearances along coasts across Europe soon drew attention. There was an unsettling pattern. Each fragment coincided with a visitor experiencing inexplicable anxiety, nightmares, or minor accidents that seemed impossible to predict. The first collector could not explain the sudden chills that accompanied the artifact. A wealthy amateur historian in Hamburg had obtained a small batch of the rubber tablets and displayed them in his study, arranging them carefully under glass. He noted an oppressive sensation, a tightening in his chest, whenever he lingered near them. Friends who entered the room described feelings of dread, though the tablets themselves appeared inert. Within months, the collector's life began to unravel. He lost his sleep entirely, his writing became erratic, and he withdrew from all social contact. Eventually, he vanished, leaving the artifacts behind, which were subsequently passed to a colleague who experienced similar symptoms. In several cities, the reports began to converge in unnerving patterns. Scholars in Paris, London, and Amsterdam all noted that new tablets would appear on shorelines or in private collections with alarming regularity. Those who touched or even handled them briefly described hallucinations of dark figures moving just out of sight, shadows shifting in the corners of rooms, and an almost audible insistence to continue examining the object. Rumors began circulating of entire households falling ill with fatigue or unexplained ailments, coinciding precisely with the arrival of a tablet. The scattered evidence seemed unrelated at first, but the eerie repetition suggested a phenomenon beyond coincidence. Laboratories confirmed the substance was unlike any known material. Chemists examined the tablets for traces of resin, rubber, and synthetic compounds, but nothing matched the composition they encountered. Attempts to identify the ink or markings yielded similar dead ends. The symbols appeared etched, yet resisted chemical analysis, as if they were neither carved nor printed in any conventional sense. Some researchers proposed that the tablets were products of experimental industrial processes, yet no factory could be linked to them, and historical records offered no explanation for their sudden proliferation across multiple nations. Even those who avoided direct contact found themselves drawn into restless nights. Accounts describe visions of ritualistic gestures, the sound of chanting faintly audible at dawn, and the persistent sensation that unseen eyes were observing their every move. One linguist reported recurring dreams in which he walked along a beach strewn with countless fragments, each tablet glowing faintly in the mist. The dreams would leave him shaking and disoriented, and during the day he noticed that minor misfortunes, spilled coffee, missed trains, letters lost in the mail, compounded relentlessly. Collectors, scientists, and casual witnesses alike began to speak in hushed tones of a force that could not be contained, one that seemed to follow the artifact wherever it appeared. Anthropologists noted eerie similarities to objects bound by superstition and fear. Legends from Indonesia and Japan reference idols imbued with spiritual intent, meant to safeguard treasures or exact vengeance, often described as capable of crossing boundaries between worlds. The goddess Cipatir tablets bear uncanny resemblance to these accounts. Small, portable, and seemingly innocuous, yet capable of inducing terror and compulsion. Scholars debated whether the effects were psychological, a form of mass hysteria, or something beyond conventional understanding. Every test, every observation seemed only to deepen the mystery rather than provide clarity. In recent years, the idol's movements remain untracked, leaving unanswered questions. Museums have locked fragments away, collectors have sworn them off entirely, and private auctions quietly avoid the subject. Yet reports continue to surface. A tablet appearing on a riverbank in Belgium, a sudden illness in a French collector's household, an inexplicable accident in a Dutch laboratory. Even as institutions attempt to contain it, the artifact persists as if it has its own agency, moving unpredictably across continents and into the lives of those who cannot resist it. In a forgotten corner of the world, the goddess Chipotea waits for the next hand to disturb her. The Thomas Busby Chair, England. The executioner's ledger recorded a final, ominous statement attributed to Thomas Busby, a man condemned for murder in the early 1700s. Busby, awaiting his death by hanging, reportedly cursed the chair in which he had been granted one last meal, declaring that anyone who dared sit in it would meet a sudden and violent end. The chair, a simple oak seat with worn armrests, was placed near the family inn he had frequented, and legend quickly entwined with fact as locals recounted the chilling tale. Though some dismissed it as folklore, early records from travellers and innkeepers suggest that accidents began to occur almost immediately. Guests who ignored warnings would suffer injuries, collapse from sudden illness, or vanish from the premises under strange circumstances. One visitor noted an immediate chill when he dared to sit. A young tradesman, curious and skeptical, recounted that the moment his body settled into the chair, a sharp tremor coursed through his limbs and a sense of intense foreboding gripped his chest. He claimed to have seen shadows flicker at the edge of his vision and heard whispers that made no discernible sense. Shaken, he left the inn within hours, only to be involved in a carriage accident days later that left him severely injured. Subsequent accounts echo a similar sequence: brief contact with the chair, unease, and an inexplicable misfortune that befell the individual soon after. Local innkeepers recalled whispers of tragedies tied to the chair. Over decades, the chair passed through the hands of several proprietors, each maintaining logs of strange occurrences. Footnotes mention guests fainting, servants struck with sudden fevers, and animals in the room reacting with terror as if sensing an unseen presence. Stories persisted that the chair could not be removed without incident, and that it carried an invisible weight of malice, tangible to those who approached it. Many innkeepers placed signs and warnings around the room, yet human curiosity often proved irresistible, and the chair continued to claim its victims. Diaries left by caretakers documented injuries and sudden illness. One entry from the mid-1800s describes a guest who lingered too long in the common room, leaning against the chair while reading. Within hours, he developed a high fever and delirium, ultimately dying in isolation from symptoms that baffled local doctors. Another account tells of a soldier who, weary from travel, sat briefly to rest his legs, only to collapse into convulsions, leaving friends certain of a supernatural cause. The repetition of incidents, meticulously recorded, created a chilling dossier that suggested the chair's malevolence was neither random nor natural. Folklorists observed a recurring pattern of fatal misfortune. The tales surrounding the chair were not isolated to Busby's Inn, but seeped into local culture. Songs, rhymes, and oral warnings emphasized the lethal consequences of defiance. Scholars of English superstition note that the Busby chair became emblematic of objects imbued with vengeance, intended as deterrents against wrongdoing, yet capable of manifesting real harm to the unsuspecting. The pattern persisted over centuries, solidifying the chair's reputation as an object whose influence was immediate and inescapable, transcending rational explanation. In the present day, the chair remains locked behind glass, displayed in a controlled area of the original inn. Visitors report a pervasive sense of unease when standing near it, and some claim they can feel a pull or subtle heat emanating from its surface, though no physical force is detectable. Warning signs caution against sitting, and caretakers maintain records of anyone who approaches closely. Even with these precautions, the atmosphere of the room seems charged with the accumulation of centuries of fear and tragedy, a testament to the enduring potency of Busby's last act. Even now, some claim it seems to draw attention, inviting defiance. Tourists linger too long, staring, photographing, or joking about the legend, and invariably leave with a deep, inexplicable unease, as if the chair itself has registered their presence and filed it away. Scholars and skeptics alike have attempted to rationalize the chair's influence as psychological suggestion, yet patterns of misfortune continue to defy reason, creating a tension that persists as tangible as the polished wood of the ancient seat, and anyone who dares sit in it may find themselves overtaken by sudden misfortune, never leaving the room the same again. The woman from Lem statue, Cyprus. Buried beneath layers of soil and centuries, the statue emerged with unsettling presence during a 1,970 excavation in southern Cyprus. Carved from smooth limestone, the figurine stood barely a foot tall, yet it conveyed a formidable aura, its delicate features twisted into a solemn, inscrutable expression. Archaeologists dubbed it the woman from Lem and speculated that it represented a deity associated with death or the afterlife. From the moment it was unearthed, a sense of unease seemed to permeate the dig site. Pieces of clay tools and pottery found alongside the statue bore strange, almost ritualistic markings, suggesting it had been part of ceremonies meant to ward off unseen forces. Tools slipped from hands, measurements faltered, and some team members reported hearing whispers in the stillness of the excavation pit, as though the earth itself was speaking warnings no human could understand. The first archaeologists to touch it recorded subtle changes in their thoughts. One of the lead researchers, a meticulous man known for his rationality, began leaving notes of increasingly erratic observation, describing shadows that lingered longer than natural light would allow, and recurring images of the figurine in dreams. Colleagues reported that he became withdrawn, obsessed with cataloguing the statue's features, and resistant to leaving the site at the end of the day. Within months, he fell ill under mysterious circumstances and passed away suddenly, leaving behind journals that hinted at an intangible weight pressing upon his mind, a fascination that bordered on compulsion. As it passed from one collector to another, misfortune seemed to cling to its surface. The statue entered private collections across Europe, each acquisition followed by strange incidents. One collector awoke to find the figurine inexplicably moved from its display, though the house showed no signs of entry. Another reported a fire breaking out near the statue, contained before major damage occurred, yet no cause could be determined. Each new owner described a sense of being watched, the feeling that the figurine observed not just their actions, but their thoughts, and each eventually suffered sudden, unexplained misfortunes that forced the sale or abandonment of the statue. Witnesses, even for a moment, reported haunting dreams and an unsettled feeling that lingered. Art historians and museum visitors noted that long periods of exposure to photographs or sketches of the statue produced disquieting effects, restless sleep, anxiety, and a sensation of invisible eyes following them. One student, tasked with cataloguing images of the artifact, recounted repeated nightmares in which she wandered through dark corridors lined with identical statues, each silently judging her. These psychological disturbances persisted regardless of distance, suggesting that the statue's influence extended beyond physical proximity and that its mere depiction could provoke a creeping dread. Historians noted that similar figurines carried warnings of death or divine anger. Neolithic Cyprus produced a range of small carved figures, many of which appear to have served ritualistic purposes, yet none matched the intensity of the woman from Lem. Folklore hints at deities that exacted revenge upon those who disrespected sacred objects, and some experts speculate that the statue may have been intentionally imbued with symbolic power meant to instill caution or fear. Over centuries, such objects could gain a reputation not only for their sacred origins, but also for the inexplicable tragedies that followed anyone who attempted to claim them. Its position may be hidden or defended, but accounts of it still surface from time to time. Private collectors claim it remains sealed away in a climate-controlled environment, while museums describe gaps in provenance that suggest the figurine has appeared and disappeared without clear explanation. Researchers remain hesitant to study it closely, citing both historical accidents and the psychological strain observed in previous encounters. Even documented photographs of the statue evoke caution, with curators reporting subtle disruptions in staff behavior whenever they are displayed or reviewed. No matter where it rests, the statue's aura of doom endures. Scholars and collectors alike speak of the object with quiet reverence, acknowledging a presence that cannot be measured or contained, a sense that the tragedies tied to it are neither random nor accidental, and that ownership itself carries an unspoken, inevitable price. And those who possess it may discover that the weight of centuries watches over them, and that death waits patiently for the next hand to disturb it. The Koh-i-Noor diamond, India divided by Britain. Amid the shimmer of forgotten empires, the Koh-i-Noor emerged not as an ornament, but as a witness to the rise and ruin of those who sought to possess it. Its name, meaning mountain of light, once carried the weight of reverence, yet its brilliance came to mirror ambition more than divinity. In its earliest accounts, the diamond was said to outshine the torches of royal courts, a single crystal that caught the light of countless fires. To the rulers who guarded it, it was not merely treasure, but proof that fate could be held in one's hand, if only for a moment. And in that belief, the first shadow was cast. Deep in the river-fed lands of Golconda, miners laboured beneath the searing sun and the indifferent gaze of their overseers, their tools striking veins of ancient rock that had formed long before human history had names. Among the gems pulled from the alluvial soil, the Koh-i-Noor stood apart, its clarity so perfect that some whispered it could reveal the heart of whoever held it. Legends grew around its discovery, claiming that the man who first touched it died before he could speak of its beauty, and that the mine itself was sealed by flood soon after. It passed quietly from kingdom to kingdom, leaving behind not prosperity, but stories of fever, betrayal, and inexplicable ruin. Its brilliance was constant, but the hands that held it rarely lasted long. Through conquest and coronation alike, the diamond moved across centuries of shifting rule. It adorned the Mughal peacock throne, shimmering in the splendour of Shah Jahan's court, a reflection of an empire at its height. When Nadir Shah of Persia invaded Delhi in 1739, he demanded to see the royal jewels, and when the gem was revealed, he reportedly whispered, "Koh-i-Noor, Mountain of Light," a name that would outlive them both. Later, chroniclers described how the gem was carried in procession through the streets of Isfahan, guarded by soldiers and priests, before vanishing again during the turbulence that followed his assassination. By the time it resurfaced in Punjab under Maharaja Ranjit Singh, it had already gathered a reputation not of luck, but of burden. The ruler kept it under strict guard, believing its loss would foretell the fall of his kingdom. When he died, that prophecy unfolded with chilling precision. The British annexation of Punjab in 1849 marked the diamond's most controversial passage. Signed over to the East India Company under the terms of the Treaty of Lahore, it was taken from the treasury of the boy king Duleep Singh, then only 11 years old, and shipped to England as both a trophy and a warning. On the voyage aboard the HMS Medea, the ship was struck by cholera and later by a violent storm off the Cape of Good Hope. Crewmen claimed that the gem had brought with it a curse of kings, though the company's officials dismissed the notion as superstition. When it arrived in London, it was recut under the supervision of Prince Albert, who ordered its form altered to increase its brilliance, though nearly half its weight was lost in the process. Critics noted that what emerged was not the same stone. It had become a reflection of empire's vanity, reshaped and diminished to fit its own light. Displayed at the Great Exhibition of 1,851 inches, the Crystal Palace, the diamond drew crowds who approached in reverent silence, yet many left underwhelmed. Its fire was subdued behind glass, and its stillness unnerved those expecting radiance. Some visitors remarked that it seemed to absorb rather than reflect light, as if it had grown tired of being seen. The British Crown would later mount it in Queen Victoria's regalia. where it adorned generations of royal ceremonies, each marked by its unblinking presence. Yet behind the opulence lingered the murmur of unresolved possession, a gem admired but never truly belonging. In the modern age, its story continues to drift between diplomacy and superstition. India, Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan have all laid claim to its return, each invoking fragments of its long journey as evidence of rightful ownership. Yet the diamond remains under guard in the Tower of London, locked within the crown jewels, its brilliance monitored by cameras and centuries of silence. Visitors who stand before it describe an odd sensation, neither awe nor fear, but a quiet awareness that they are being watched in return. In every reflection, the diamond seems to hold more than light. It holds memory, perhaps even judgment. What empire once called triumph now feels like inheritance of another kind, too heavy to display without unease. Behind its polished display, the Koh-i-Noor still gleams with the memory of every empire it outlived and every hand it refused to serve for long. The ring of Silvianus, Britain, forged in the Roman provinces, the gold ring bore an inscription warning of vengeance, etched with letters that seemed almost alive under the light. Scholars believe it belonged to a wealthy Roman named Silvianus, who sought to protect his property and wealth, yet inadvertently invited a curse upon himself. The ring, simple yet heavy with symbolic weight, was discovered centuries later, buried in the grounds of a Roman villa, remarkably preserved despite the passing of time. Archaeological reports describe it as a solid piece of gold, its inscription partially worn but still legible, hinting at the presence of a deliberate, malevolent charm intended to punish greed or betrayal. The priest who cursed the ring left records hinting at a deliberate intent to punish greed, though these records were fragmentary and cryptic. According to Roman accounts, Silvianus had angered a local temple official, who retaliated not with immediate violence, but with a supernatural binding. Warnings were carved onto the ring itself, suggesting that anyone who possessed it unlawfully or with ill intent would meet calamity. Over the following decades, letters and references in historical texts hint at the misfortune that befell those who came into contact with it, though details were often veiled in superstition. The intentionality of the curse remained a point of debate, but its effectiveness would later be echoed in centuries of legend. Medieval scribes documented the ring in legal disputes, linking it to sudden deaths and misfortune among claimants and witnesses alike. As the ring changed hands, disputes arose in monasteries, courts, and private holdings, each account noting unexpected accidents or untimely illnesses. Some clerical records describe jurors collapsing, witnesses vanishing, or claimants dying before proceedings concluded. The ring was treated as evidence with caution, often stored in iron boxes or buried within church walls, yet misfortune seemed to shadow anyone daring to claim it. By the 13th century, references in legal manuscripts carried both fear and fascination, a testament to the enduring power attributed to its curse. Upon its rediscovery, archaeologists examined the fragments, noting anomalies in its composition that seemed to defy standard Roman craftsmanship. Modern metallurgists observed an unusual density and subtle trace elements not commonly used in the period, leading to speculation that the ring's material had been intentionally selected to endure and influence its owners. Reports from 20th century scholars note that even careful handling of the artifact provoked minor accidents or a sense of unease, suggesting the curse's reputation was more than folklore. The object's ability to inspire dread seemed to transcend time, creating a continuum in which history and superstition intertwined. Owners over the centuries reported a compulsion to possess the ring alongside subtle accidents that defied explanation. Collectors, treasure hunters, and academics alike described dreams dominated by gold bands and looming shadows, as if the ring's power extended into their subconscious. Misplaced manuscripts, overturned furniture, and sudden injuries were common, always surrounding the artifact's presence. Attempts to sell or relinquish the ring often failed to alleviate anxiety, as if mere proximity ensured that the curse's influence endured, binding each holder in an invisible web of misfortune. Legends surrounding the ring seeped into literature and folklore. magnifying its reputation across generations. Scholars and enthusiasts cite its partial inscription as inspiration for fictional depictions of rings imbued with power, most notably influencing literary works about objects that dominate wills and destinies. The Roman origins and medieval misfortunes created a narrative that blurred fact and myth, lending a timeless quality to the legend. Even in academic circles, the story of Silvianus's ring is recounted with reverence, acknowledgement that the human fascination with cursed objects perpetuates their aura of danger. Its current location remains unknown, and those who have touched it speak of unease that lingers long after contact. Attempts to trace the ring through modern collections or auction records often hit dead ends, as if it were deliberately concealed or vanished to protect the unwary. Accounts of minor accidents, inexplicable sensations, and obsessive behavior continue to emerge, preserving the legend's hold over history, scholarship, and imagination. Anyone who seeks the ring today may find that the weight of centuries and curses presses down upon them, a silent and relentless force that waits for the moment they claim it. The mirror of Myrtle's plantation, United States. Nestled deep within the oak-lined grounds of Myrtle's plantation, the mirror gleamed with a polished surface that seemed to pulse under sunlight, its ornate frame carved from gilded wood, etched with delicate floral patterns. Constructed in the 18th century, the mirror quickly became more than an object of decoration, drawing attention not only for its craftsmanship, but also for the whispered tales of tragedy that had accumulated around the plantation. Guests and staff alike reported moments in which the glass seemed to hold more than their reflections, hinting at something just beyond perception, something that refused to be explained by conventional reasoning. The mirror's surface, smooth and darkened with age, captured the imagination as well as the unease of all who approached it, a silent witness to lives long past. Early visitors to the plantation reported figures flickering behind the glass, moments that vanished when approached. One housemaid recounted seeing a young woman's face appear for a second, framed by the reflection of the room, only for it to disappear when she looked directly. Tourists described glimpses of shadowed forms walking behind them, yet the rooms remained empty, the windows and doors locked as they had been. Even children, less attuned to skepticism, claimed that the mirror moved things subtly, altering the space around them in ways imperceptible, yet deeply disquieting. These initial encounters laid the groundwork for a pattern of strange phenomena that would continue for decades, feeding the growing legend of the mirror's haunted nature. Over time, a pattern emerged in eyewitness accounts, faces appearing in corners, reflections behaving independently of their owners, and fleeting shadows that flickered across the mirror's surface. Visitors reported that at certain hours, the glass seemed to distort light, making faces appear elongated or distorted, always suggesting a presence just out of reach. Some photographs taken in front of the mirror captured figures not visible to the naked eye, blurred silhouettes whose identities could not be traced. The consistency of these reports suggested that the mirror did not merely reflect reality, but something beyond it, a layer of perception that resisted understanding and offered no comfort to those who tried to study it. Those who lingered near the mirror often described a creeping sense of unease, as if the glass observed them more than they observed it. Emotions intensified unnaturally, apprehension became panic in the space of moments, while subtle physical sensations, a coldness or tingling, seemed to radiate from the glass. Some visitors found themselves unable to look away, drawn compulsively to examine the surface, even as their rational mind urged retreat. Scholars note that prolonged exposure to certain objects, particularly those tied to repeated historical trauma, can evoke a psychological response, but the experiences reported at Myrtle's plantation defied standard explanation, leaving even experienced investigators unsettled. Paranormal researchers and historians attempted to capture the phenomena, recording fleeting images and sounds that defied conventional explanation. Video footage showed faint, shifting shapes that could not be attributed to lighting or camera errors, and audio recordings occasionally captured indistinct murmurs, as though multiple voices whispered simultaneously behind the surface. Attempts to move or remove the mirror from its setting were met with misfortune or sudden accidents, reinforcing the notion that the artifact's power was bound to its surroundings. Each study, however, only deepened the mystery, providing documentation without answers, evidence of influence without understanding. Local folklore amplified the mirror's reputation, passing stories from generation to generation about the restless spirits trapped within. Tales spoke of former owners, servants, and visitors who had died under tragic circumstances, their essence allegedly lingering, seeking acknowledgement through the glass. The plantation's guides, careful to distinguish legend from fact, nonetheless recounted narratives of apparitions, reflections appearing before tragedy, and visitors overcome with sudden fear. These stories, combined with documented experiences, created a cultural aura that cemented the mirror as an object of fascination and dread alike, a tangible connection between history and the inexplicable. Even when left untouched, the mirror's presence seemed to shape the room, an invisible tension threading through the walls and the air. Rooms containing the artifact were described as heavier, oppressive, as though the air itself bore a memory of the lives that had passed before it. Guests sensed a weight that could not be quantified, a subtle pressure that lingered long after the mirror was no longer in sight. Every reflection became a test of perception, each glance a moment of suspended uncertainty, reminding all who entered that the glass was more than mere metal. And Mercury, it was a conduit for histories and horrors that refused to remain buried. When the mirror finally falls silent, those who have stared into its depths swear the shadows continue to watch from just beyond sight. The Delhi purple sapphire, India divided by Britain. Carved from the depths of Indian mines, the gem gleamed with an otherworldly hue, a jewel whose origins were steeped in ritual and reverence. Its presence was long considered sacred, a stone linked to both prosperity and divine favor. Legends whispered among miners and local priests told of misfortune befalling those who tried to claim it for selfish reasons. The gem's early history is murky, recorded only in fragments of colonial chronicles and temple inscriptions, yet even these hints suggest a potent aura that preceded its extraction. Those who first laid hands on the stone often experienced strange illnesses or accidents, lending the sapphire a reputation for bringing despair to anyone who sought to possess it outside of ceremonial purpose. Colonial agents coveted the stone, transporting it across oceans, while its reputation for misfortune quietly followed. It was seized, sold, and gifted in a succession of transfers that connected empires and aristocratic families, each new owner believing the stone could elevate wealth or status. Yet in each case, the gem seemed to carry an invisible weight, influencing decisions and compounding human error. Letters and reports from the 19th century recount traders and diplomats facing unexpected disasters, from ruined contracts to sudden deaths, always in proximity to the jewel. Its journey from India to Britain was not only physical, but symbolic, representing the collision of desire, greed, and unintended consequences across continents. Shortly after it arrived in Britain, a series of deaths and financial collapses seemed to haunt those who came into contact with it. One merchant, who displayed the gem to prospective buyers, suffered a sudden illness that left his household in chaos. A banker who held it briefly lost a fortune overnight, under circumstances that could not be explained by market fluctuations. Accounts of servants falling gravely ill while handling the stone appear alongside stories of fleeting accidents and unexplained quarrels among estate staff. Each incident was minor in isolation, yet together they built an undeniable pattern, cementing the jewel's reputation as a bringer of despair and calamity. Misidentified by gemologists as a purple sapphire, the stone gained a reputation that transformed superstition into legend. This error created a mystique that entwined scientific curiosity with fear, turning the jewel into a subject of obsession for collectors and scholars alike. Articles in trade journals and gemological treatises from the early 20th century chronicled its unusual coloring, weight, and purportedly cursed history. Misidentification, whether accidental or deliberate, amplified its notoriety and ensured that the gemstone would never be considered merely decorative. Its status became both a warning and a temptation, attracting those who sought to understand it and punishing those who underestimated the dangers inherent in possessing it. Encased in protective glass and accompanied by strict warnings, the jewel continued to draw fascination from those who dared to study it. Museum curators and private collectors noted the compulsive attention it inspired, the subtle unease visitors felt when standing too close. Written guidelines forbade prolonged contact, yet researchers could not resist documenting its appearance, composition, and history. Attempts to photograph or analyze the gem often coincided with equipment failure, sudden illness, or inexplicable accidents, reinforcing the belief that the stone's curse extended even to those who approached it scientifically rather than materially. Historians and treasure hunters recounted obsession, accidents, and inexplicable setbacks that seemed to revolve around the gem. Letters, diaries, and interviews reveal patterns of compulsion, as if the stone exercised a silent influence over the ambitions of those around it. Individuals drawn to the jewel frequently suffered personal losses or unexpected misfortunes, often shortly after achieving proximity to the sapphire. Even well-documented exhibitions where it was displayed under controlled conditions saw subtle disruptions, broken glass, faint sounds, or shifts in light that no one could explain. The gem seemed to shape not only events, but also perception, blurring the line between reality and legend. Time has not dulled its aura, and the stone remains a silent witness to centuries of ambition, desire, and calamity. Its surface reflects light as if alive, and those who study it swear that a sense of unease lingers long after leaving its presence. The sapphire has become more than a gemstone. It is a symbol of human obsession, a vessel for warnings ignored across generations, and a reminder of the cost of coveting power without regard for consequence. Even a brief touch seems to awaken the gem, releasing a quiet unease, as if centuries of human ambition and suffering are etched into its very surface. Ötzi the Iceman's artifacts, Austria divided by Italy. Unearthed from the ice of the Alps, the body immediately captured global attention, a window into a civilization frozen in time. Ötzi, as he came to be called, was accompanied by an assortment of tools and personal effects that revealed remarkable craftsmanship and daily life from more than 5 millennia ago. Scholars marveled at his copper-bladed dagger, woven clothing, and simple kit, each item meticulously preserved by the glacier. The discovery promised unprecedented insight into prehistoric Europe, yet alongside scientific fascination arose an undercurrent of unease. The story of Ötzi was celebrated, but whispers soon emerged about the misfortunes that seemed to follow those who handled his remains. During the meticulous excavation, even seasoned archaeologists reported a persistent sense of unease as they carefully removed layers of frost and soil. Equipment failed inexplicably, tools slipped, and minor accidents occurred at rates unusual for such a controlled dig. Some researchers felt a weight pressing upon their thoughts, a subtle anxiety that grew with each layer uncovered. Observers noted that injuries and sudden illnesses affected not only those directly handling the body, but also individuals nearby. These occurrences, recorded in personal journals and field reports, contributed to the growing perception that the excavation itself was accompanied by more than natural hazards. Among the belongings recovered were finely crafted tools and a copper-bladed dagger, each item preserved as if awaiting the hand that would wield it again. The dagger's copper, sharpened and well-maintained, suggested Ötzi had been prepared for conflict or survival in unforgiving terrain. Flints, ropes, and other daily implements provided a vivid picture of his life, yet modern researchers could not ignore the subtle disquiet these objects seemed to carry. Those who spent prolonged time near them reported restless sleep, strange dreams, and moments of disorientation. Even the simplest artifact, the leather pouch, the fragment of grass sandals, gained a mysterious aura, as if the glacier had trapped more than flesh and fabric. It had preserved something intangible. Strange occurrences began almost immediately as members of the excavation team fell ill or faced sudden, unexplained accidents. A senior technician suffered a severe allergic reaction without prior exposure. A researcher slipped while walking across secure ice paths and broke a wrist. More alarmingly, news filtered through Europe of deaths among specialists who had handled Ötzi briefly, each incident seeming coincidental yet unnervingly precise. Historians and archaeologists debated whether these events were pure misfortune amplified by cognitive bias, but for the team on the glacier, a quiet apprehension settled in, unshakable and persistent. Scientists studying the artifacts in laboratories reported equipment malfunctions and inexplicable disruptions, as though the objects resisted scrutiny. Digital imaging failed unexpectedly, samples degraded faster than anticipated, and faint anomalies appeared in photographs and scans. Some researchers documented fleeting shadows or unusual reflections in microscopes and cameras, phenomena dismissed by colleagues as optical illusions yet stubbornly consistent across multiple accounts. These incidents were never dramatic, but accumulated into a subtle, oppressive atmosphere, a reminder that the artifact's history extended beyond what conventional science could quantify. News outlets and documentaries amplified the notion of a curse, recounting stories of misfortune and heightening public fascination. Media coverage framed Ötzi not only as an archaeological treasure, but as a figure whose posthumous influence reached far beyond the glacier. Each broadcast, article, and photographic exhibit highlighted the artifact's pristine preservation, while also nodding to the peculiar accidents surrounding them. The interplay of science and sensationalism ensured that the mummy and his possessions captured public imagination, transforming scholarly caution into a broader legend of unease. Even decades later, the artifact's presence inspires a careful reverence, their silent testimony leaving a lingering question of whether history carries its own warning. Modern exhibitions meticulously control temperature, humidity, and access, yet visitors describe a peculiar sensation of being observed, an inexplicable tension in the air. The objects, frozen in time, seem to demand acknowledgement of the lives they represent, the risks taken to uncover them, and the mysteries that remain unresolved. Each glance at the dagger, the tools, or the clothing is a reminder that human curiosity can awaken forces that resist full understanding. A faint chill seems to linger around the artifacts, as if the glacier itself has preserved not only a body, but a quiet warning that continues to reach beyond time. The hands resist him painting, United States. Painted in 1972 by Bill Stoneham, the canvas depicted a boy and doll positioned in a stark room, their eyes unsettlingly alive. The figures seemed frozen in posture, yet imbued with an intangible presence, an eerie suggestion that they were observing the viewer as much as the viewer observed them. From its earliest exhibitions, whispers of discomfort followed the painting. Visitors described an immediate tension, a subtle disquiet as though the figures were aware of more than mere observation. Even the lighting of the gallery seemed to shift unnaturally around the edges of the canvas, highlighting shadows that were not quite explainable. The artist never confirmed the painting's intent beyond a general exploration of imagination and human perception, but the unsettling energy it radiated was impossible to ignore. From the first exhibition, viewers reported unease, claiming the figures seemed to shift when unobserved. Some swore the boy's eyes would track them around the room, and the doll occasionally appeared in slightly different positions than when first seen. Children were often the first to react, staring silently at the canvas with a mixture of fascination and fear, while adults would feel inexplicable anxiety or an urge to look away. Gallery staff recorded complaints of faint whispers or rustling noises during quiet hours, events that defied explanation but were consistently noted. The painting seemed to invite scrutiny while simultaneously resisting comfort, an impossible balance between curiosity and dread. Possessing the painting seemed to invite insomnia, mysterious disturbances, and a shadowy gaze that followed its owners. One owner reported hearing footsteps in empty rooms and fleeting glimpses of shadows near the edges of vision, always coinciding with the boy or doll within the painting. Another found the doll's eyes appearing darker in the early hours of morning, though it was impossible to determine whether this was natural light or something more sinister. Attempts to photograph the figures often resulted in blurred or distorted images, as if the camera itself could not capture the true essence of the painting. Each new handler seemed to develop an unspoken fear of prolonged interaction, a psychological weight that few could endure. Local newspapers and art journals chronicled a string of odd occurrences tied to the painting, adding layers to its growing legend. Stories of strange dreams, obsessive attention, and sudden anxiety circulated alongside conventional reviews of the artwork. Critics and enthusiasts debated the validity of the reports, some dismissing them as imaginative exaggerations, while others felt an undeniable tension when the painting was mentioned. The more the narrative spread, the more individuals seemed drawn to investigate, perpetuating a cycle in which curiosity itself became a conduit for discomfort. Psychologists and art experts attempted to rationalize the phenomena, attributing them to suggestion, anxiety, or the human tendency to anthropomorphize. They noted the power of composition, perspective, and human expectation in evoking fear or unease. Yet the consistency of experiences across time, place, and observers challenged purely rational explanation. Even those prepared for unsettling imagery reported an internal disquiet that grew with each hour spent near the canvas. The painting seemed to operate on a subtle psychological frequency, influencing perception without overt action, guiding attention and emotion with uncanny precision. Despite scientific skepticism, the artwork remained controversial, carefully displayed behind glass, with strict instructions for viewing. Institutions that lent or exhibited it did so with warnings, urging viewers to maintain a respectful distance. Security cameras sometimes recorded fleeting anomalies, subtle distortions in reflections, or minor movements of light on the surface, none ever verified yet impossible to ignore. The painting existed in tension, a fragile bridge between art and something ineffably potent, a reminder that human minds could be unsettled by more than brushstrokes alone. Years later, the painting continues to evoke fascination and dread, a testament to the power of imagery over perception and mind. Even now, visitors describe a lingering tension when standing before it, a slow, creeping awareness that they are being studied in return. The boy's gaze, the doll's subtle tilt, and the cold neutrality of the room within the canvas create an experience both hypnotic and alarming. It is a work that invites engagement while quietly punishing the inattentive, a delicate trap woven from paint, shadow, and human expectation. Time spent before the canvas is never entirely harmless, as if the figures retain a quiet, watchful patience that extends beyond the edges of their painted world. The Crying Skull of Burton Agnes Hall, England. Rumours of sorrow clung to the skull, spreading quietly among servants and visitors alike. Its pale surface, smooth yet unnervingly lifelike, seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, drawing attention despite its small size. From the moment it was placed in the hall, those who came near reported a subtle chill, a sense that the object was more than mere bone. Local lore spoke of its origin in a family marked by tragedy, the skull said to hold echoes of grief and unfinished stories. Even casual observers felt the weight of history in its presence, a pressure that pressed gently on the mind without obvious cause. The artifact's origins trace back to a family long entwined with tales of misfortune and untimely death. Records suggest it belonged to a lineage whose members often met sudden or unexplained ends, and the skull became an object of whispered fascination over the centuries. Some suggested it had been kept as a warning, a tangible reminder of fate's reach. Others believed it was an innocent relic, its reputation amplified by superstition. Yet for those within Burton Agnes Hall, the skull's reputation was never merely abstract. The living remembered the stories, and the dead seemed, in some inexplicable way, to continue shaping them. Over time, scholars noted that even the mere handling of the skull seemed to provoke faint but consistent headaches among caretakers, a subtle, physical manifestation of its eerie presence. Occasional sobs seemed to issue from the skull itself, startling anyone within hearing distance. At first, they were dismissed as wind in the hallways, settling wood, or imagination. But the sound was persistent and eerily human, low and plaintive, resonating in empty corridors at night. Servants and caretakers reported it at irregular intervals, sometimes synchronized with the passing of strangers or the sudden quiet of the estate. The sound carried a peculiar clarity, a rhythm that mimicked breathing, and left those who heard it shaken, questioning the limits of perception. Attendants and onlookers reported an unsettling shiver, a creeping awareness of being observed. Even in broad daylight, those who lingered near the display claimed the skull's hollow eyes seemed to follow them, tiny shadows shifting subtly with movement. Some described the sensation of a hand brushing their shoulder, or a sudden drop in temperature, enough to stop the heart for a moment. The effects were never violent but cumulative, a slow, insistent reminder that the skull was no ordinary object. Its presence altered the perception of space, time, and comfort within the hall, shaping behavior as if unseen rules governed the room. Experts in folklore and superstition examined historical documents, attempting to uncover a logical cause for the phenomena. They traced the skull's lineage, collected letters, and interviewed descendants, seeking patterns that might explain its chilling reputation. Rational explanations abounded imagination, expectation, and the weight of myth, but even skeptics admitted that the consistency of reports defied casual dismissal. Each account, whether centuries old or recent, added to a composite portrait of an object that demanded respect and caution. Chronicles from diaries and letters recorded events that defied explanation: strange sounds, sudden chills, and fleeting shadows. Some witnesses recounted hearing footsteps in empty rooms or glimpsing movement in peripheral vision. Others experienced nightmares that mirrored the stories they had heard, dreams in which the skull's presence expanded, growing larger than life, and its lamentations echoed endlessly. These personal testimonies, preserved carefully over generations, created an unbroken chain of unease, connecting the present to distant pasts in a web of subtle terror. Some letters described how the skull's lamentations appeared to respond to the emotional state of those nearby, growing louder in moments of anger or sorrow, as though it absorbed and reflected human emotion. Individuals near the display often sensed an invisible weight pressing down, a presence that seemed to linger long after leaving. It was not a force that could be quantified or measured, but its effect was unmistakable: anxiety, discomfort, and a quiet compulsion to look again, even against better judgment. The skull exists within the hall as both object and agent, a silent witness and a subtle instigator of dread, capable of altering thought and perception without uttering a single word. Its influence continues, a lingering tension that refuses explanation and resists dismissal. Many who have dared to linger near the skull speak afterward of an enduring unease, a sensation that the echoes of grief and misfortune are not confined to history, but remain alive, patient, and quietly watchful. The Bassano candle holder, Italy. The Bassano candle holder, an ornate piece of dark bronze, adorned with miniature figures contorted in expressions of anguish and terror, has haunted those who have come into contact with it for centuries. Crafted by a forgotten artisan whose name vanished from records, the object was rumoured to be tied to arcane rituals, carrying with it a palpable sense of dread that clung to any room it entered. Collectors and historians alike have long whispered of headaches, fleeting hallucinations, and an inexplicable compulsion that seemed to grip anyone who studied its intricate carvings too closely, though the candle holder itself remained silently poised, unlit, and inscrutable. The origins of the candle holder are murky, tied to the late Renaissance, when occult practices intertwined with art, alchemy, and the secretive societies of northern Italy. Documents suggest that the Bassano artisan was commissioned by a wealthy patron whose obsession with immortality and arcane knowledge drove him to the occult. Within the intricate carvings of the candle holder, some scholars have identified symbols associated with forgotten ritualistic rites meant to manipulate human perception and summon forces that dwell beyond the known. Though such claims could easily be dismissed as legend, the pattern of misfortune surrounding those who possessed it has lent the object an enduring reputation among collectors and historians alike. reports of its effects begin subtly. Those who handled the candle holder initially described a creeping sense of unease, a feeling that the shadows cast by its form seemed to move independently. As the candles burned, the bronze figures appeared to twist ever so slightly, their eyes seeming to follow the movements of anyone in the room. Individuals reported hearing faint whispers, fragments of conversation that vanished when sought, and an irresistible compulsion to repeat long-forgotten memories or secret thoughts aloud. Scholars and antique dealers who encountered the piece over centuries often noted that what began as mild discomfort quickly escalated into obsession, hallucinations, and in some cases, violent delusions. In the late 19th century, a well-known Italian collector purchased the candle holder and displayed it in a private gallery. Guests recalled entering the dimly lit room and immediately feeling nausea, vertigo, and an oppressive melancholy that clung to the air. One visitor described the sensation of being watched not by a human presence, but by the bronze figures themselves, a suffocating awareness that left them trembling. Within weeks, the collector began exhibiting erratic behavior, muttering to himself during daylight hours and speaking in unknown tongues in the dead of night. Eventually, he vanished without explanation, leaving the candle holder untouched, yet its aura of dread only deepened in reputation. In the circles of European antiques, the candle holder circulated among dealers, each meeting misfortune shortly after acquiring it. One historian documented a pattern. Those who attempted to study the candle holder closely often suffered severe mental breakdowns, while others reported vivid dreams in which the figures came to life, dragging them into nightmarish scenarios of torment and chaos. Attempts to contain the candle holder in museums or private collections proved equally futile. Guards and caretakers spoke of sudden fits of paranoia, uncontrollable screaming, and an overwhelming sense of being trapped in a space that was at once familiar and impossibly alien. Interest in the Bassano candle holder endures among modern researchers, though it is tempered with wariness. Tests conducted under controlled conditions have recorded inexplicable rises in body temperature, altered brainwave patterns, and persistent low-frequency sounds undetectable to the human ear, yet seemingly perceived subconsciously. Experts emphasize that no traditional explanation, be it chemical, structural, or psychological, adequately accounts for the breadth and intensity of the reported phenomena. Even so, the candle holder has never been destroyed, moved only under extreme precautions, and continues to attract both academic curiosity and private obsession, its history a grim testament to the peril that accompanies intimate contact with certain objects of the past. The candle holder sits today in a private collection somewhere in Italy, a shadow of bronze that exerts influence without visible action, an object that defies reason yet refuses to fade from memory. Anyone who studies its surface too long speaks of seeing the figures blink, tilt their heads, and whisper in languages that do not exist, leaving their own minds unable to distinguish the real from the imagined. Though many attempts have been made to photograph it, capture it in scans, or replicate it for study, each effort has been met with equipment failures, accidents, or inexplicable phenomena that drive the investigators to abandon their work. And so, the Bassano candle holder remains, a silent sentinel of despair whose influence stretches far beyond the reach of those who dare to uncover it. The Belcourt Castle chairs, United States. No one could have predicted that a set of gilded chairs, imported from France and displayed in the opulent halls of Belcourt Castle, would become notorious not for their craftsmanship, but for the dread they seemed to carry. At first, they appeared as objects of exquisite luxury, carved with intricate detail and upholstered in velvet that gleamed under the chandeliers. Yet those who approached them spoke of a subtle unease, a prickling sensation at the base of the skull, as though the chairs themselves were aware of their presence and quietly judging each visitor. Many who lingered in the room felt an inexplicable heaviness pressing down, an invisible weight that seemed to distort the air around them and coax an unshakable tension into the mind. Originally crafted in the salons of France during the late 18th century, these chairs were designed to signify wealth, refinement, and social prominence. Their journey to Belcourt Castle in Rhode Island was intended to bring European grandeur to the estate, yet subtle records suggest that the craftsmen imbued the objects with patterns and designs meant to impress the eye, but perhaps disturb the spirit. The aristocratic sensibilities of the early owners may have overlooked such details, yet even then, servants whispered of sudden headaches, vertigo, and an unusual quiet that fell over the hall whenever the chairs were in use. Letters from estate staff hint at minor accidents and strange behaviour that coincided with the arrival of the chairs, though these reports were often dismissed as superstition or stress. The first to sit in the gilded seats described sensations that emerged almost imperceptibly. A slight nausea would creep through the body, followed by a tightening in the chest and a sudden awareness of imagined movements in the periphery of vision. One estate visitor recalled that the shadows cast by the carved legs and arms seemed to shift when unobserved, a subtle writhing motion that made it impossible to fully focus. Diaries from the period reveal that some guests refused to remain in the room for more than a few minutes, while others developed lingering anxiety that persisted for days. Even those with no prior interest in the supernatural found themselves unsettled, their minds tracing patterns and shapes in the air that did not exist. Over the years, the effects only intensified. Researchers who studied the estate decades later documented reports of insomnia, sudden irritability, and compulsive behavior among staff who worked near the chairs for extended periods. One curator who catalogued the collection noted a chronic sense of vertigo and faint whispers in the empty hall. More alarming were the accounts from private visitors who described sensations akin to a presence pressing against their back or a sudden chill that travelled up the spine. Those who dared to remain seated for long periods experienced episodes of disorientation, as if the room itself had subtly changed around them, shifting just enough to make familiar corridors feel alien and threatening. Efforts to research or exhibit the chairs met with obstacles that seemed to defy explanation. Curators reported inexplicable malfunctions in cameras, recording devices, and lighting equipment whenever the chairs were in view. Even scientists attempting to measure temperature or electromagnetic activity noted irregular fluctuations with no discernible source. Personal observations suggest that the chairs exert a subtle psychological pressure that cannot be quantified by instruments, one that intensifies as attention focuses on them. Test subjects often left the room with pounding headaches, an uneasy sense of exposure, and lingering fear that their thoughts had been touched by something beyond comprehension. Upon sitting, visitors frequently felt compelled to stand at once, as though the gilded chairs demanded obedience and punished hesitation. Observers began noticing repeated patterns, objects in the room subtly shifting when no one was present, shadows moving independently, and an ever-present feeling of being scrutinized. The more time one spent in the room, the more acute the paranoia became, manifesting in racing thoughts, heightened anxiety, and the sensation that unseen eyes followed every movement. Scholars who examined these accounts noted the remarkable consistency of the effects across generations, geography, and individual temperament, suggesting an influence not bound by simple superstition. Belcourt Castle continues to hold a reputation for subtle terror, its gilded chairs remaining untouched in the Great Hall, silent yet profoundly affecting. Visitors who glimpse them are struck not by their beauty, but by the disquiet they inspire, a creeping awareness that lingers long after they have departed. Those who document or photograph the chairs describe a peculiar tension, an invisible energy that clings to the images and evokes an inexplicable sense of dread. The chair's quiet persistence is a reminder that some objects may hold a power imperceptible to the eye, yet undeniable to the mind. The moment someone rises from the gilded chairs, a subtle dread clings to them, impossible to shake. The Tomb of Tutankhamun Artifacts, Egypt. When the tomb of Tutankhamun was first revealed in the Valley of the Kings, it ignited a frenzy of fascination and disbelief across the archaeological world. Scholars and adventurers alike had long speculated about hidden treasures and royal secrets, yet nothing prepared them for the wealth, artistry, and sheer preservation of the boy pharaoh's final resting place. Every artifact, from gilded chariots to ceremonial daggers, seemed imbued with a quiet majesty, whispering of a civilization that had mastered both life and the rituals of death. Yet alongside the awe came murmurs of misfortune, tales of accidents, and deaths that seemed too coincidental to dismiss, threading unease through what was meant to be a triumph of discovery. Howard Carter and his team meticulously documented each chamber and object, often pausing to marvel at the intricate craftsmanship that had endured millennia. Lord Carnarvon, whose financial backing made the excavation possible, was present for the initial entry, his excitement mingled with caution born of ancient superstition. Photographs and sketches captured the tomb's treasures, while detailed notes recorded the arrangement of every relic, from ceremonial masks to jars of preserved oils. The team marveled not only at the opulence, but at the sense of solemnity that seemed to cling to the air, as though the pharaoh himself observed the proceedings from beyond the veil of death. Tragedy came swiftly when Lord Carnarvon, bitten by a seemingly minor insect, fell ill and died suddenly, sparking immediate speculation of a curse tied to the tomb. Newspapers and journals seized upon the story, embellishing it with details that ranged from the plausible to the fantastical. Carter, deeply immersed in his work, documented the event with quiet disbelief, noting that while the death was medically explainable, the timing was disquieting. Soon after, others associated with the tomb suffered untimely accidents, illnesses, or sudden deaths, creating a pattern that could not be ignored and fueling an ever-growing legend that the treasures carried more than historical significance, they carried a burden. As word of the tomb spread, historians and journalists began cataloguing the series of misfortunes that seemed to follow those who had been involved. From the photographers who documented the opening to local workers and visiting dignitaries, a startling number of people connected to Tutankhamun's tomb experienced mysterious illness, violent accidents, or bizarre circumstances surrounding their deaths. Scholars debated whether these events were mere coincidence or the manifestation of an ancient curse designed to protect the sanctity of the burial site. Letters, diaries, and press clippings reveal the extraordinary consistency of the reports, leaving a sense that the tomb itself had woven a thread of unease through the lives of those who approached it. The press seized upon each incident, blending fact and speculation to create headlines that fascinated the public while unnerving the academic community. Scientists debated natural explanations, bacteria in sealed chambers, toxic mold, or the stresses of early 20th century fieldwork. Skeptics dismissed the notion of curses entirely, arguing that selective reporting and sensationalism exaggerated an otherwise typical pattern of occupational hazard. Yet, even as logical explanations circulated, a shadow of apprehension clung to every photograph, every report, and every account of the tomb, suggesting that some element of the artifact's presence remained imperceptible but profoundly affecting. Now housed in museums, the artifacts retain their splendor, yet whispers of misfortune follow them still. Even contemporary scholars who handle the treasures with extreme care describe a subtle weight, a lingering tension that defies measurement, as though the objects themselves observe and remember. Visitors report an uncanny sensation of being watched when gazing upon the treasures, a quiet chill that hints at the lives, deaths, and secrets embedded in the artifacts. Photographers and curators alike note equipment failures or odd technical malfunctions that occur without explanation, further amplifying the aura of the tomb's enduring influence. The legacy of Tutankhamun's tomb endures, a remarkable intersection of history, artistry, and unexplainable misfortune. Despite decades of study, conservation, and public display, the artifacts continue to fascinate and unsettle, serving as silent witnesses to the extraordinary events surrounding their discovery. Every account of sudden illness, untimely death, or inexplicable accident adds weight to a narrative that bridges time, leaving modern observers with a sense that the treasures of the Boy King carry more than cultural value. They carry an enigmatic presence that persists through generations. Seekers of its full story may soon find that the tomb's watchful presence endures, its influence quietly extending past all attempts at containment. The Cursed Ring of Rudolph Valentino, United States. Rudolph Valentino was celebrated as the very embodiment of silent film allure, his presence on screen commanding admiration and desire across continents. Yet beyond the bright lights and glamorous premieres, an object of quiet menace accompanied him, a ring whose history was as mysterious as the tragedies that seemed to trail it. Friends and colleagues noted that Valentino never removed it, as though it were a talisman or perhaps a tether to forces beyond comprehension. Its gold band and dark gemstone gleamed innocuously, but whispers began to circulate that it carried a malevolent influence, one that would not respect the boundary between admiration and obsession. The ring itself had a history that predated Valentino's fame. Some accounts suggest it had passed through a string of owners, each of whom experienced untimely misfortune, though documentation is often fragmented or anecdotal. Jewelers recalled hearing odd stories tied to the piece, warnings of sleepless nights or brief but inexplicable fits of panic. By the time it reached Valentino, the object had accumulated a shadowed reputation, though few in Hollywood took such tales seriously. In private, however, those who observed him wearing it noted subtle changes in his demeanor, moments of agitation, sudden introspection, and an intensity of focus that seemed to go beyond artistic obsession. Shortly after acquiring it, tragedy seemed to follow. Valentino himself suffered health complications that were sudden and severe, leaving friends and doctors alike unsettled. Rumors swirled that accidents on set, missed appointments, and even fainting spells were somehow tied to the ring. Associates closest to him reported inexplicable unease in its presence, as though the object itself exerted a subtle pressure upon the mind. It was not a force of overt menace, but a creeping, insidious influence, shaping perception and amplifying tension with a precision that could not be easily explained. In the years that followed, collectors who later acquired the ring experienced their own share of misfortune. Some were plagued by financial ruin, sudden illness, or unexpected accidents. Diaries and personal letters hint at a growing pattern. The more intimate the interaction with the ring, the more profound the consequences. Even those who merely displayed it briefly noted a lingering tension, an awareness of being watched, or dreams that felt vivid and intrusive. Despite, or perhaps because of its elegance, the ring developed a reputation among certain circles as a cursed object, one whose allure was inseparable from the peril it carried. Word of the odd occurrences surrounding Valentino and the ring spread rapidly to the media. Industry insiders whispered rumors, blending fact and speculation into stories that fascinated the public while unnerving those in the entertainment world. Skeptics dismissed the notion of a curse, attributing deaths and accidents to coincidence, stress, or the capricious nature of fame. Yet the number of incidents associated with the ring, ranging from minor mishaps to severe misfortune, was difficult to ignore. Even those who approached the object with scientific curiosity or historical interest felt a subtle, unexplainable pressure that suggested the stories were not entirely unfounded. In the present day, the ring belongs to private hands, its location revealed only to trusted collectors and historians who treat it with care. Even contemporary scholars and curators report a lingering sense of unease when studying it, as though the object retains an invisible authority over the room and the minds within it. Photographs and documentation are taken cautiously, yet some claim that anomalies appear in images, reflections, and even digital scans, hinting that the ring's influence extends beyond the physical world. No definitive explanation exists, leaving both experts and enthusiasts to grapple with the uneasy possibility that the ring's reputation may be justified. From its creation to the present, the cursed ring's legacy persists, blending allure, danger, and the ambitions of those who covet it. Each account of misfortune, each whispered anecdote, adds weight to a story that bridges decades and continents, leaving those who study it with a sense of caution bordering on reverence. Its influence is subtle, insidious, and yet undeniable, shaping the lives of those who encounter it in ways that defy ordinary logic or expectation. Ever patient, the ring remains, its darkened gemstone casting back a world of admiration, obsession, and subtle danger.